Hey, I'm Eric from Cornerstone Northwest Education. Thank you for joining me in this short course on ground fault circuit interrupters. And really we're going to focus today on how they keep people safe. While most homes we inspect were not required to have GFCI protection when they were built, the requirements have steadily increased over the years. And while they're not required in all homes in all instances, why do we continually make recommendations to add or to upgrade to GFCI protection? Well, you came to the right place for those answers. So at the end of this, I hope you feel a little bit more informed, a little bit more prepared, and a little bit more educated to help your clients navigate my findings. So let's get started. Let's start by clarifying just a few things. GFCIs, or ground fault circuit interrupters, are different from AFCIs, arc fault circuit interrupters. The abbreviation kind of looks the same and sounds the same, GFCI versus AFCI. But specifically, I want you to remember these things. And here's where the rubber meets the road on what these things do. GFCIs protect people from shock. That's their purpose. Where AFCIs protect dwellings from fire. So people from shock versus dwellings from fire. So this is not to say that AFCIs don't protect people, because who are in the dwellings that AFCIs protect? That's right, people. So just as a primary function, GFCIs protect people from shock, where AFCIs protect dwellings from fire. Here's a great chart that describes the findings from a Consumer Product Safety Commission report from 2017, where they studied from 2004 to 2013, they accumulated data on electrocutions in homes. And even though GFCIs have been around for a while, which we're going to discuss in just a moment, but even though GFCIs have been around a while, people are still getting shocked and people are still getting electrocuted. And in a lot of cases, they're being killed from that electrical shock, that electrocution. So you can see the data here. The red line is the average. So over that 2004 to 2013 period, 60 people on average are killed per year by electrocution in their own homes. So you can see that this is a significant concern. So let's talk about electricity just briefly. Some people think that electricity is always trying to get to the ground, and that's not exactly true. So what electricity wants to do is it wants to flow into the house, do its job, and flow back to its source, which would be wherever that electricity was created. So if you look at this example here, electricity always wants to flow in the house through whatever device you're going to use and then back out. That's what it wants to do. Now, there are instances where the electricity flows in to the home and then it will flow into a device, and for some reason that hot electrical wire comes in contact with say the metal case of a washing machine or some other metal components inside a device where it's not supposed to, and that's called a ground fault. So in that instance, the electricity actually wants to use the human to get to the ground. So remember, electricity always wants to go back to its source, but if that path is interrupted, then the electricity will want to go to the ground. And in a lot of instances, it wants to do that through the human. So the GFCI, which is that ground fault circuit interrupter, which is right here, it's going to measure the flow of electricity coming through it, through the device, and then back out. And if there's a discrepancy or it detects that ground fault, where there's been some type of event right here where the electricity now wants to get to the ground via the human, the GFCI detects that, and then it cuts the power off before the human ever feels it. So it's a very effective device, proven to work, and once again, keeps the humans from being shocked. And that's the bottom line on how GFCIs work. Let's watch a short video which I find helpful, and I hope you do too.
Now we've also got ground fault circuit interrupters, and we see them, I think, almost all the time in wet areas like kitchens and bathrooms. I recognize this one because it's got two buttons on the front. You can literally test it and reset it right there. What are these protecting us against?
The GFCI outlet is protecting against ground faults. Any ground fault is where electricity travels the path of ground. And an instance where I can show you that is the right side of the receptacle is your power, or your hot wire as they call it. And if you go to the neutral, you can see the illumination of the voltage tester is showing you that there's power in this receptacle.
So it's coming out and then going back through the neutral, back into the outlet there like it's supposed to.
Exactly. Now when I take the power, which is right there, and I touch it to a known grounded source, which could be water that is touching something metal, it shuts off.
So in this case, the electricity was coming out, but it wasn't going back through neutral, it was going to that ground wire.
That's correct.
That's the problem.
Yes, and so what they've designed is the device for life safety with any sort of ground fault, whether someone's got wet feet and they touch something that's live, or in a bathroom or a kitchen instance where everything's wet.
So it's only if you touch ground, correct? If you touch something else that wasn't
Sure.
grounded.
So we have power here, and if I touch the wood bench, which is not grounded, it will not trip.
Terrific. All right. Now, in this case, ground fault protection is built into this outlet, but you can actually get GFCI protection other ways, and in fact, you brought us an extension cord.
That's correct, Kevin. This is a cord adapter that allows you to get GFCI protection where you don't have it in a device or a receptacle that's non-protected. You would plug it in. And the receptacle now is protected through these three plugs, and you can plug your Christmas lights or skill saw in, and it has the same LED indicator on it that the device has.
So this is a GFCI circuit breaker right here?
That's correct. And this is protecting this outlet right here on the same with the same effect as a receptacle does.
And I notice it also has a test button, so by pushing that it trips, and then I can just simply reset it. Same deal with the arc fault circuit interrupter?
Yes, that's correct.
And what of these devices is code?
They're all code, Kevin. They have different applications. The arc fault circuit protection is required in all homes that are built now, and the GFCI protection is required in bathrooms, basements, outside, and kitchens, wherever there's water.
Arc fault for all buildings built now, so this is for new construction.
New construction or renovating if you need to protect the circuit for arc fault.
Okay,
yes.
so we may still have some of these older circuit breakers in the box, and this is a good time to update them to either arc fault or GFCI.
Absolutely.
Most of us have seen GFCI outlets in the home or the receptacles in your bathroom, your kitchen. Now it's much more common to see not only the protection in the home where you can see it, but also in the panel where a lot of people don't see it. And these are all GFCI breakers. And in fact, GFCI and AFCI combination, or what they call dual purpose breakers, actually live in the panel here. So much of the electrical safety in a home starts at the panel. So both GFCI and AFCI, and then out into the home, you can protect those individual circuits by the GFCI receptacles. So there are quite a few ways to protect each of the circuits, and each electrical contractor will make decisions on what maybe is their preference while in keeping with the code at the time. Short history on GFCIs. They've actually been around for quite a while. So they came about in 1971, which is a very good year, I'm just saying. 1971 through 84, you could see here that GFCIs became required on the exterior plugs of a home, bathrooms, and garages. And then they stepped that up a little bit from 1984 to 1990 through some more incremental changes. They added basements, kitchens, crawl spaces. Now, something you may see in common with these spaces is the presence potentially of moisture. So outside, of course, bathrooms, garages, you can read the list here. So once again, GFCIs are designed to protect people, and whenever there's water, which is a fantastic conductor of electricity, that's where you're going to find these GFCI requirements. So one more iteration, a major iteration in 2014, added dishwashers in laundry rooms. Once again, think about a moist environment and the protections that GFCIs provide. This chart describes when homes were built by decades. And if you remember, GFCIs came on the scene here in a limited capacity. They were expanded here. We saw a few expansions here, and then we talked about a major expansion here. Well, it's not major, but the latest expansion here in 2014. So there's been an incremental addition of spaces where the GFCIs are required. So as a home inspector, how do I handle that? If I'm looking at a home here that doesn't have the protections maybe required here, how do I handle that? So I want to talk about that just for a few minutes. I equate all electrical safety in homes, especially if it's an easy upgrade or a fairly easy fix. We're talking about swapping out a breaker or a receptacle. These are inexpensive, easy ways to give you exponential safety in a home. I look at it a lot like seatbelts. So seatbelts have been around since 1965, I think they became law. What about cars before then? What if you owned a classic car that was built before then that did not require seatbelts? Would it be a good idea to go back and add seatbelts? Because seatbelts have been proven to save lives and improve personal safety. In my mind, the answer is yes. That would be a good idea to retrofit. So that's kind of the view I take. So let's talk about home inspection reports. If you take, let's say, a 1952 home, and no, that's not my bathroom, but if you take a 1952 home where we now know that no GFCI protection even existed back then, what about a write-up that sounded something like this? No ground fault circuit interruption or GFCI protection present. These are required for safety. Recommend a licensed electrical contractor, add GFCI protection. Well, the problem I have with this statement is they are not required for safety. That is a stance that some home inspectors might take, but I think it's a little misleading. How about a 1985 home? And by 1985, you know that GFCIs were in place in some areas, but not all of the areas required today. This is just the same write-up. What if we wrote it again and said, hey, these are required for safety. I noticed that in your laundry room, you didn't have any GFCI protection. So is that the best way to handle it? In my mind, I don't think so. So maybe a better way to handle this, and this is how I handle it. A 1985 home, I may note some areas where GFCI protection has not been upgraded to. Some homeowners do upgrade and add that additional safety feature. But what if I don't see it in a 1985 home? My write-up might sound something like this. No ground fault circuit interruption protection present in noted locations. Due to the age of construction, this home is not equipped with GFCI in all commonly accepted areas a newer home may have. Recommend upgrading to GFCI protection in all spaces exposed to moisture. Now that's a lot of words, but I use some key phrases here just to be helpful, but also leave it up to the consumer to make these decisions. It's not required, but it's a good idea to upgrade. Now, once again, having the knowledge I have about the statistics where people are actually hurt through electricity, I am compelled to put this in the home inspection report. But once again, I need to be sensitive to the language because no, it's not required, but it sure is a good idea. So that's why I use words like upgrade. Hey, recommend you upgrade. And then here's a little bit of education piece about upgrading to all spaces exposed to moisture. And then further with the education here, I include a link to read a little bit more about GFCI receptacles and how they keep people safe. So that's how I handle it. So that's it on GFCIs. Now you know what I know, and more importantly, you know why I think the way I do when I write my inspection reports and make my recommendations. So I hope you found this course to be helpful. Thanks for joining me.